One, we've built our business on consistency and relationship building because those, if you want to boil down how we've had success in the marketplace versus everyone else, it's because of those two factors.
Welcome to Multifamily Insights. I'm your host, John Casman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. Listen, if you're enjoying the show and getting some good value, let us know. Leave us a rating and review. We want to hear from you and get your honest feedback so we can make the show work harder for your investing goals. And listen, if this is your first time listening to the show or you just haven't done so for some odd reason, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. We've got a great show today. We're going to be talking to Justin Wawrzyniak. They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to grow as a multifamily investor, you have to spend more time with other multifamily investors. And an easy way to do that is to join our apartment investing mastermind group today. Just go to casmancapital.com and click on the mastermind button. Now, as a part of this group, you'll get access to expert trainings, group coaching calls, industry news and updates, as well as all of our webinars and workshops, including our 3-hour workshop on raising capital. Again, if you want to be around other multifamily investors that can help you scale your portfolio today and grow your network, make sure you're a part of the Apartment Investing Mastermind. Just go to casmancapital.com and click on the Mastermind button today. Now, Justin was once a highly recruited engineer turned full-time multifamily investor. Now, currently, he is the primary investor on a 5X generational wealth assets totaling 59 units and over $1 million in equity created in just the last 2 years. Now, he is an expert at finding off-market and direct-to-seller properties. Justin's proven no-stress DTS process has allowed him to consistently close deals. Let's check out and talk to the Cash Flow Cowboy himself, Mr. Justin Wawrzyniak.
Thanks for having me on, John. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Hey, Justin, I went over your bio at a very high level. Why don't you take 2 minutes and fill in some of those gaps?
Yeah, so I am 28 years young right now, if you want to call it that, and um, definitely had kind of an odd path into real estate. So you mentioned it in the bio, engineering, right? How did I go from an engineering job and then at the age of 25, I transitioned to real estate full time? And it kind of goes back even further to, I'd say, maybe a little problematic childhood at the age of 18, arrested for the second time. And that was kind of the, what the heck are you doing with your life, bud? Like you're kind of pissing away your potential here. And it's funny because you mentioned the last name, Wawrzyniak, the difficult last name to pronounce. So if you look at my family transition to America, right? I have this picture that's seared in my mind, and it's this tiny, tiny home that my great grandfather migrates over, flees war torn Poland to come over with nothing, right? For this American dream type situation. And I'm looking at it. And then I start to realize in this picture, I was like, wait, what's that thing in the front? The front half of the house isn't even theirs. It's owned by another family in town, the meat market in town. And so they're raising 6 children in maybe 600 square feet, if we're lucky here, home, no running water, no power. And that's like them grinding to survive. And then you fast forward to me just being an being dumb, be doing stupid stuff. And that's where it was kind of this aha moment of, I don't know, you can say it a million different ways. You're the sum of your 5 closest friends. Your network is your net worth, right? We've all heard it. That was where I learned that important lesson. And I did go into engineering, but then it was while I was in engineering, I realized, hey, I want to start surrounding myself with business owners, investors. And that's kind of how that transition to real estate happened. And I could not be more thankful, more blessed. And now it's kind of, how fast can we get to financial independence, financial freedom, and how quickly can we scale our portfolio to achieve that?
Yeah, Justin, we're definitely going to talk more about the real estate part, but I thought what you said was really insightful. Just thinking about, your family, the legacy, the struggles, the sacrifices that they made to kind of put you and, the whole family lineage into a better situation. And you mentioned that, maybe you were hanging with the wrong crowd and making poor choices, getting arrested 2 times. I mean, that second arrest, was this a conversation with family members? Was this just you sitting alone and processing? I mean, what really made you decide in that moment that this was not the way you were going to have your life turn out?
Yeah, the biggest thing was the alone time processing while in trouble, right? So that definitely was kind of the all right, you got to do some self reflection. I think anytime you want to create massive change in your life, it's got to start with you, right? Then the environment. So that's when I started changing from, hey, I looked at who in my friend group and family and coworkers, everyone that you surround yourself, who's elevating you. And if they're not, they're bringing you down. If it's, they're excessive drama, if they are excessive partying, binge drinking, whatever it may be, right? If they're not elevating you, it's time to change your environment. And then, hey, let's fast forward to the engineering side. What happened after the arrest, right? So that was 18. That was going into university. I crossed the graduation stage a few years later as the number one, the top engineer in my graduating class, near perfect 4.0 GPA. And it was simply because I got surrounded by the high performers at the university, right? And as a result, I was molded into a high performer. And I was by no means the smartest engineer in that class. No, I just was surrounded by good people, and as a result of being around good, high achieving people like yourself, John, like the podcast that you put out, consuming that kind of content is you grow as a result of that.
I think it's really direct and simple, but I think it's powerful too because as I'm thinking about your story, I'm looking at it in two chapters, right? Chapter one here that we're talking about, at least, is you know, 18, getting arrested twice, hanging with the wrong crowd. Um, chapter two, you being the top engineering student in your university. And it's not to say that you learned everything after you turned 18. I'm sure obviously you grew and became a better student, but you had that in you when you were 18 as well, right? The big difference was who you were surrounding yourself with, the environment. And we don't always give ourselves in the environment enough influence for how much it can shape our lives. And if you're not getting the results you want, think about who you're surrounding yourself with. Who are you talking to? Who are you listening to?
Mhm.
It's great to have family and friends. We all love our family and friends, but you should be surrounding yourself with people who can help elevate you. And I love the way you phrased it. You said, "Who is elevating you?" If you are not spending time with those people who are trying to get to the next level, investing themselves into the right things that can help them grow and progress, then you're not going to be setting yourself up for success in a way that you did. And to your point, it's not that you were the greatest engineer, maybe not even the best engineer in the class, but you surrounded yourself with the best environment in that class, and that allowed you to see results. Let's talk about that transition, right? Because you here you are now, number one in your class, engineering, and at some point you realize, I don't think I really want to do this. Let me get in real estate. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I like to highlight the top of my class, less of a brag, but more of like, hey, I didn't just go into real estate because I had nothing else going on, right?
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was a conscious choice to make that switch. Now, let's take a step back. Where was I in that time? So this is mid-pandemic. I'm deciding to leave a safe, secure, high-paying, let's be honest, engineering job.
And
Okay,
very
that's a
early in
little
your career too.
very early. I'm 25 years old at this time. Crazy, right? Um, let's also look at my father as an engineer, my grandfather is an engineer. So now I'm also breaking this family legacy of engineers as well. So why would I do that? Well, one, I think a lot of us, we've read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. I read that book early on, and that at least kind of changed the mindset towards passive income. And then now that I'm an existing engineer, I'm looking at it and I go, hey, I have this unique opportunity at 25 before wife, before kids, before large bills start to stack up that I don't actually need a ton of income to live off of. I can make the switch now versus, let's take, for instance, maybe somebody in your audience that is 30s, 40s, 50s with a family and they need their job to provide for that. I had a unique opportunity to make the switch early, go after the passive income early so it can start compounding and I can achieve financial freedom earlier. a unique situation. It was by far the craziest thing I've ever done as far as like, hey, let's throw this away job wise in the middle of a pandemic. But very similar to like changing your environment you were mentioning. It's like I took a risk and I took a bet on myself. And the way that it worked out was I surrounded myself with good people real estate wise. So that mitigates your risk. And then I also invested in the most important thing, which is education. And so I started getting educated in the field so that I felt confident when I did make that transition.
Hey, Justin, I want to push a little bit more there. I think you made some really good points. Um, we're talking about this change while you were young. You didn't have some of the, responsibilities that other folks may have with a family that come later in life. Was there something that pushed you though? Was it a desire for something else or a goal or something you were missing in your engineering field? Like, what was the thing that made you say now's the time to make this move?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me has be way more important to me than money. And maybe you feel the same way, John. It's the more finite resource, which is time, right? And we'll never get more of it, and it's limited. And so when I was in Indianapolis for when I started my engineering career, right? Moved to Indianapolis from Florida, and I actually was fortunate enough. My dad's side of the family is from Indianapolis, so my grandmother was there. This crazy thing happened. I moved to Indianapolis, and when I was working that engineering job, I rarely had the opportunity to take the time off to go spend time with her in her, her last years of life, right? Her like that alone was enough to motivate me. And then what I saw on the flip side is I did do the transition and I got to like legitimately the last months of her life. I'm able to sit at her bedside for hours at a time, 8 hours of a day, right? If I wanted to. And it was because I now had a freedom over how I chose to spend my time. And that's kind of like solidified it for me of, hey, yes, the money's great, right? We'll achieve our financial goals when we achieve them. Okay. But you will never get back time. So if you can structure your life in a way that frees up and gives you more flexibility with how you choose to spend it, that for me is kind of what's going to drive me to do anything.
Yeah, Justin, I appreciate that, man. I know how challenging that situation must have been, but also I think it's in those moments where we get the clarity necessary to make the tough choices. And for you, going through COVID and going through your grandmother's last days, you're close, you're right there in the same city with her after living in Florida, so far away, and you may as well still have been in Florida with the amount of time that you were able to spend with her
Exactly.
until you're able to take that time, and recognizing that again, time is the one thing that we don't get back, and it doesn't matter how rich you are or what else you've done. You can't make that back. And for anyone listening, that is the reason we always talk about passive income, so we have more time to do the things we want to do with the people we want to be with. And we've got to focus on that today, because tomorrow may not be there, maybe too late, or again, you just every day you wait is a day that it takes you longer to get to your goals. So I appreciate you sharing what motivated you, and hopefully that insight there helps trigger someone else to take whatever necessary step they need to take on their own journey. Let's talk about the direct to seller side, right? And let's get into the investments, because one of the things that you do really well is you're able to identify deals from that are off market opportunities going directly to these owners and making them work. Talk to me a little bit more about kind of your investing approach.
Yeah. So like I said, 25 years old, I'm getting into real estate for the first time. You know, if I looked at, who I was didn't have the experience. And so if I were to go have those conversations with brokers, let's be honest, no one was really taking me that serious. And I at least had enough self-awareness to be like, okay, how can I still get into deals and hopefully scale my portfolio without necessarily going through brokers? And that's kind of where the off market came from. And then dive a little deeper into that. It's like, all right, why don't I talk to the sellers directly and kind of pitch myself, pitch my story, pitch who I am, and see if they will take me serious enough to sell me the properties. And that's kind of how it started. And then it's really just molded into this full business. And I won't go too deep into like the business side of things, but that is the important factor, right? Especially if a lot of your audiences are passive investors or on the capital side and stuff like that. You got to understand the people that are sourcing the deals, including the brokers. That for them is a full blown business and needs to be treated as such and takes a lot of time. And that is kind of the value that I was able to contribute to partnerships so that I could start buying properties, right? I have a good deal. I talk to the owner. They are agreeing to a discounted price versus what you would find on market. These are the better terms than what we would have found on market. Let's partner together and let's get this deal done. And then that was a good synergy for me to say, hey, I'm young, but I have value. And then maybe I can partner with someone on the passive side or the capital investment side. And that's a really good synergy for tackling those different deals.
That's a great insight, right? Recognizing that, hey, as a newer young investor, these brokers are probably not going to take me very seriously. What's the better path and what can I add? Because I think some people stop at these brokers are not going to take me very seriously and then do nothing, as opposed to figuring out what they can do, which is what you did. And it was reaching out directly to these owners. And you talked about on the back end, partnering with people, right? Figuring out where you might have some weaknesses. Maybe you didn't have all the capital, so you can partner with people who have money, or you can partner with other operators. So that way you can still go out there and make these deals happen. One thing you said was that you would talk to these owners and then you would pitch yourself or you would pitch the opportunity. I'm thinking about it the same way maybe those brokers do. So what are you saying to these people, considering that starting out, you had no experience, you're a young guy? What are you pitching to these owners?
Yeah. So good point, because you're like, hey, who is this random person reaching out to me to buy my property? And that's always going to be how it goes. And that is why, one, we've built our business on consistency and relationship building, because those, if you want to boil down how we've had success in the marketplace versus everyone else, it's because of those two factors, right? We have technology that we are leveraging to help us with follow-ups and to track leads, right? I'm a multifamily investor. I don't know if we ever highlighted that. And so just across our Midwest markets, we have over 5,000 apartment buildings that we are marketing to regularly, weekly, monthly. And so the only way that you can manage all that is through technology, right? And that's kind of the leg up we have. So we utilize technology for the consistency. But to go back to your question, the relationship building is what makes the deal happen, right? If you come across as like a robot, or your only focus when talking to them is transactional, just think of how you would feel in outside of selling someone your property. Think of how you would feel, maybe at church meeting somebody, or maybe meeting somebody for the first time, a couple's date or something like that. And the person you're talking to is just so transactional. It's always transactional. It's like, yeah, are you going to want to hang out with them? No, you're not. You're going to get through dinner and then you're going to go on your merry way. And that's kind of how it needs to be. Like, we've had deals that the only reason, for instance, we just sold a deal. That deal fell apart in the middle. And the only reason it came back to life was because I had asked him months prior about his family. And the most important thing to this seller, Ed, was his granddaughter. He would not stop talking about her all the time, ballet, competitions, yada, yada. And we figured out there's a point in when we were under contract, we kept asking for documents like over and over. It's just, your typical we need this information for the lender to get the deal done, right? He legitimately was ready to walk away, didn't care at all. And it was all because we were asking him for documents on the day that he was supposed to spend the entire day with his granddaughter playing bingo and going to her ballet and stuff like that. And as soon as I heard that on the phone, I go, Ed, hang up. We'll call you back in 2 days. We'll get this stuff taken care of later. And that's like, if you can realize everything you're doing for convincing them to sell to you or working with you is you building a relationship with them and them trusting you, then you're going to succeed. And that's how you're able to, yes, you are kind of convincing them to sell at discounted prices to you versus if they were to go to a broker and list it on the market. but that's because you get to a point where they like you and they trust you and they almost want to work with you versus somebody else.
Justin, I love what you just talked about, consistency in relationships. And when you can build those relationships, what you're talking about is building it to the point where they know you, they like you, they trust you, and they'd rather work with you than someone else. I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to remember how people made you feel. You're not going to remember that, oh, we got an extra, $7,000 on this deal from that guy. So that, man, that was great. Like, you're going to remember what that experience was like, and was it smooth? Was it easy? Would you want to do business with that person again? And for experienced investors, they recognize that that's more important than just any individual transaction. So I'm really glad you highlighted that point. With that example you just gave, can you talk more about just any tips or insights to build relationships or to build it to the point where they kind of like you and they trust you and they want to work with you as opposed to someone else?
Yeah. And this works for brokers, this works for sellers, this works for, potential love interests, whatever it may be, is avoid the transactional side of things, right? When I am talking, let's take, for instance, when I'm talking to a seller, I am asking, I have a printout of questions that I kind of need answered so I can underwrite the property and get an idea of how much we can offer. But I'm not just going down the list, like hitting them question, 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 question. Like that sounds so transactional, right? We're having a conversation. And when I can kind of work in those questions, that's when it has the most impact of it still sounds conversational relationship building. And then, all right, you got your property information. That's great, right? You need it to get an offer. I'm not saying don't ask about the property, but more importantly, ask about their work, ask about their kids, ask about their family. And that will, one, help it when you call them back 6 months later and you can reference, that their kid went to a hockey tournament or something like that. That'll be like, aha, I remember talking to Justin 6 months ago. So then you don't have to restart the relationship each time. So there's one benefit. And then kind of the other benefit is that you might actually uncover some of their seller motivations with these conversations. For instance, let's reference the same example I gave you about the daughter or the granddaughter being so important to him. The reason Ed wanted to sell his property in the first place was because his brother, who had been helping him with management and maintenance, had just passed away months prior due to a unforeseen health issue. So that's fine. Ed was still able to take care of the property. Obviously, he didn't want his brother to pass away, and it was very tragic. But the conversation continued, and then I find out, well, now his wife is actually the one putting pressure on him because she was so rattled by that. She's thinking, what happens if something happened to Ed? Okay, so she's going to have to take over the property. She's in no condition to do that. She had some health issues as well. So she had kind of put the pressure on, hey, Ed, now's the time, right? And then we had been building a relationship for months, and that's when, kind of that relationship turned more into, fruitful, where we were actually able to discuss offer terms and negotiate and eventually get it under contract.
No, I think that's a great way to approach, and I appreciate you sharing that with our audience on, taking the time, understanding what's happening with that individual, what's happening with the deals. And you talked about not making a transaction on it. And I think that's such a key component to this because I mean these are savvy people, right? They know what your end game is. It's just
Yes.
like if you're on a date, what you're on a
Yep.
date for. But there's still a whole process, right? There's a dance and that kind of goes into it. So um can you just talk a little bit about like at what point do you start, I don't want to say pushing, but do you start really asking more pointed questions about the deal and a transaction as opposed to just being in that get to know you kind of phase? Like, are you asking them like, hey, are you looking to sell in that first call? Or at what point are you starting to approach that part of the conversation?
Yeah, the strategy has changed a little as I've scaled my business, right? So originally, when I was the one doing all the calling and texting, I felt better conversational wise, so I could almost feel out based off of that initial call if, how far can we push it? How far can we not? That's great, but that's also me doing all the work, and that's not how a business, like, you can't scale a business that way. So we start to grow. We go into multiple markets. I also bring in a full-time acquisition specialist, but if you want to boil it down, it's a VA cold caller, right? And doing the
Hmm.
texting as well. Now, I can't expect them to have the same level of kind of conversational insight that I would. What we have to do is we have to try to make this a process for them, right? So we give them scripts, we give them questions that we want them asking. And really, are we going to have the same success rate as if I were calling everybody? Probably not. It's going to go down, but that's kind of how business works, right? When you replace yourself. But they are in the initial reach out, part of their conversation is supposed to be seeing if that owner is even interested in seeing an offer at all, right? They might not be ready to sell. That's fine, right? We're not pushing them to sell, but are you at least interested in seeing an offer? And if they say yes, that's when now the next set of our team kicks in, and that's somebody who's local to that area, that specific market, and who's going to kind of work as a lead manager for that market to start building the deep relationships that we've been talking about already, right? So then we can kind of utilize a VA for the prospecting side of things. And then when it comes time to where we really need to dive in on a relationship, we can have specific lead managers doing that. And we found a lot of success that way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, right? Like it's not that you're trying to close that sell in the first deal, but you do want to make sure this person is at least open to hearing an offer, right? There's at least some curiosity that's there. If it's a flat out no, then you know that that person is not interested in selling at all. But if they're at least curious, well, now you can open up the door and have a conversation over a longer period of time and see what happens. So really good insight. And I like the way you phrase that too, because I think that that's more inviting. Most investors, I mean, we're investors, right? Of course, we want to hear an
Yeah.
offer. Like, I don't know what your offer is going to be. Maybe it's 10 times more than I think it's worth. So just that intrigue kind of cracks the door and allows you to start having a conversation. So a really great way to do that. We've talked a little bit about kind of your approach so far, but I know you have a proven no stress DTS process. Do you mind sharing maybe a little bit more on what that process is?
Yeah, quick little shameless plug on that would be we've noticed that the reason why I did this in the first place is that, yes, great for me finding all these deals for myself and my portfolio and my partners and stuff. But there's been so many investors, right? Real estate is such a people industry that have expressed interest in finding off market deals, but they've haven't been able to kind of get over that technology gap, right? For the consistency and stuff. So earlier this year, I kind of sat down with another partner and we were like, hey, why don't we try to package what we've already done and make it available for other people? So that's really what we do. If you want to boil it down, we've kind of put together this program system to one, set up all the technology side, and then kind of help with coaching and accountability as well, so that anybody can launch their own direct to seller business and start finding off market deals. And I mean, the off market deals for me right now are so crucial because, coming into 2023, rates going up, interest, inflation's going up, and you look at all the graphs and just sales volume has plummeted. Single family, commercial, like both sides. So if you think about it, if there's nothing on the market, then the stuff that does hit the market, it's so competitive, right? It's so competitive. So it's very difficult to actually get something to pencil out on market. So that's why we've seen and we've been so proactive on the off market side, because it seems like we either sit on the sidelines for a couple of years or we get proactive and start going to sellers directly to try to find properties to purchase.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. For folks who want to learn more about that, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Yep, real catchy, simple email, or not email, website, nostressdts.com. Nostressdts.com.
We'll make sure we link to that in our show notes. You can also follow Justin on social media. He is the Cash Flow Cowboy. So we'll make sure we link to his social media handles in these show notes as well. He put on a hat. Oh, he's
There
doing
it
it.
is.
There he is.
Every
Cash
time
Flow
I got to
Cowboy,
throw it on,
baby.
at least for a little bit.
I love it. I love it, man. Well, listen, we're going to go to our round of insights. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Give me a failure or an apparent failure that set you up for later success.
Biggest failure is right when I left engineering, going into real estate, is I kind of just jumped into a partnership and it failed. right? That's why we're talking about it here. But it was such a great learning experience to understand that in real estate and in many other businesses, these partnerships should be treated like almost like a marriage, right? You've probably seen it in your partnerships, John, is you need to be meeting them in person, going to events, going to dinners, having a drink, or something like that, really vetting them, getting to know them, their family, what makes them tick, because you are investing into long-term deals, right? This could be over multiple years, and you want to make sure that there's some good synergy there. So the failed partnership actually turned into a nice little learning lesson for me.
Give me a digital or mobile resource that you recommend for your business.
Yep, shameless plug, no stress DTS for sure, but kind of the backbone of deal sourcing for anybody should be a CRM, right? You need to be tracking all your leads in a system that's reminding you when to follow up with them, so you don't have to think about it and track everything in your head.
Give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
Early on, obviously, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that's for the beginners. But as you become more seasoned, I think Who Not How by Dan Sullivan is such an important book for any business and especially real estate investing.
Give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
Fitness, exercise. I think it's, health is wealth, right? I do F45, kind of like an Orange Theory, almost daily, and then play basketball once or twice a week as well. It's just when you feel good and you stay in shape, it seems like it has implications in business and life and family as well.
Give me your number one insight for going direct to sellers.
Focus on consistency, focus on relationship building.
All right. Recently, you moved back to Orlando after being in Indianapolis for a little bit. So I'm going to let you pick if you want to do Orlando or Indianapolis, but give me your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
Orlando, and I'm going to mix it up. Ice cream shop, Sampangita ice cream shop. It is phenomenal, Filipino inspired. My fiance and I go once or twice a week. It is incredible. Definitely check it out.
All right, man. Sounds like a great shop. I got to make sure we put that on the list next time we're in Orlando. We've been, I think we've been in Orlando like 2 or 3 times in the last year or so, year and a half. So I have to check that one out next time. Listen, Justin, great information, man. Really enjoyed our conversation today. Listening to your journey from being arrested twice as a youngster to realizing that, you've got to surround yourself with the right people and change your environment, graduating top of your class in engineering, recognizing when COVID hit that, that didn't give you the time freedom you were looking for. So you switched over to real estate. And in just the last few years, you've been able to build your business going directly to sellers, telling us how to, build those relationships where they know, like, and trust you. They want to work with you, making sure that we focus on those 2 things that are really important, being consistent and building relationships, and also just make sure that we understand what it takes to build out this business, because it is important to be able to go not just to brokers, but if you can go directly to sellers, that's going to allow you to control more of your pipeline, your deal flow. Again, if folks want to learn more, they can check you out on social media, the Cash Flow Cowboy, or they can go check out nostressdts.com, correct, for the program there. Awesome, man. Well, we link to all of that in our show notes. Justin, I want to thank you again for being a great guest and coming on Multifamily Insights. I look forward to staying in touch with you, and I hope you have a great day.
John, thank you so much.